Welcome. In this short video, we're going to review the meanings of two words, bias and editorial. So we'll start with bias. The definition here, the tendency to act or think a certain way. Prejudice. It's important to know that we all have bias. Your civics teacher has a bias toward ice hockey. That would be my sports bias. It is my opinion that it is the best sport out there. I have a bias toward Papa John's pizza. I tend to order more Papa John pizza. I tend to think it is the best pizza out there. So we all have bias. This week when we talk about the word bias, we're going to talk about media bias. So that would be a television station, a newspaper, a radio broadcast that is presenting news stories from a certain viewpoint only, or only in a certain manner. I'm going to use an old example of bias in the media. One of the oldest ones that I thought of in American history is the Boston Massacre, as it's called. Only they didn't call it the Boston Massacre in other parts of the world necessarily. So this is from the American viewpoint. Now, remember to get our facts straight. The Boston Massacre was the killing of 5 unarmed civilians in Boston. And from the American viewpoint, Paul Revere writes, "The bloody massacre perpetrated in King Street, Boston on March 5th, 1770. Now, it's pretty inflammatory. Bloody and massacre are words being used. The bias would be that the British were definitely at fault. We go to the British viewpoint. It's much, much different. They say a fair account of the late unhappy disturbance. They call an unhappy disturbance. The Americans call it a bloody massacre. The words themselves show the bias. Different viewpoints of the same occurrence. Come up with a complex sentence and then a visual. The next word is editorial. An editorial is a newspaper or magazine article that gives the opinions of the writers. And the word I really want to highlight here is opinion. A editorial is an opinion. You have to remember that when you're reading an editorial. In fact, when I go to the Washington Post website, they don't even call it editorial anymore. I've noticed on their website they call it the opinion page. So on this page, you're going to get not just factual information, you're going to be getting opinions. And you, as the reader, have to be prepared to understand that these articles are opinions of the authors and that you're free to make your own decision. Generally, the higher profile the newspaper, the higher profile writers they have on their opinion page. So, for instance, in this article in the Washington Post, it's written by a governor. The Washington Post is probably not going to publish the opinion of Mr. Kelly, the civics teacher, because people don't know who I am and they don't necessarily care what I think. Another paper, the New York Times, a very well-respected newspaper, and on their front page, they also have an opinion section. And I would expect in the New York Times, they are going to have some opinions of very well-known people that Americans want to read about and want to know what they have to say. There's actually a section here under opinion for editorials. So I'll click on that. And these articles are written by a group of people that they're going to call the editorial board. But no matter what they call it, editorial, opinion page, you have to remember that these are opinions and not necessarily facts. Come up with a complex sentence and then add in a visual that shows editorial.